Hey guys, what we're going to do today is another kind of measurement given points in the coordinate plane, and it'll kind of make sense next week when we go to use these two things. Yesterday we found the distance between 2 points using the distance formula, kind of a different way of using Pythagorean theorem. Hopefully you practiced last night in that and you feel good about it. Today what we're going to do is talk about midpoint. So what I want you to think about is if I'm in the coordinate plane and I have 2 points and they're connected, forming a line segment, can I find the point in the middle? That's called midpoint. So horizontally, we can just kind of count, right? Directly in the middle. And vertically, we can just kind of count, point in the middle. But if our segment is diagonal, we talked about this yesterday, you can't count diagonally in a diagonal direction and find the point in the middle. You can approximate it. You could graph it and maybe it would end up being pretty, okay? But I want to do this algebraically. How can I do this without touching graph paper? We kind of talked about that yesterday. If I'm not going to touch graph paper, how can I algebraically find the midpoint between 2 points? All right, so what I'm going to give y'all is the formula and the definition. And then I'm going to do 2 examples where we're finding the midpoint, and then 1 example where I give you an endpoint, the midpoint, and then you find the other endpoint. So kind of like working backwards. So what I want to write is if x sub 1, y sub 1, and x sub 2, y sub 2 are points in the coordinate plane, then the midpoint of the segment connecting the 2 points has the following coordinates. Okay, I'm writing all this out because I want y'all to remember that we are in the coordinate plane. Okay, so if x sub 1 and y sub 1 are points in the coordinate plane, then the midpoint of the segment connecting the 2 points has the following coordinates. If you want to title your notes, sorry, we're in Unit 4, and this is Lesson 3, midpoint formula. All right, again, I'm just going to do a couple of examples. We are not going to graph these, guys. We're going to do them by hand, okay? So I'm going to give you 2 points, and we're going to calculate the midpoint. All right, so how do we do that? Well, whenever I think midpoint, I think middle. Another thing I think about when I think about middle is center. Center makes me think about data, the idea that I can find the average, right, of my test scores, or the average of my at bats and things like that. And so what we're going to do is, since we're trying to find the point in the middle, we're going to do just that. We're going to find the average. So I'm going to add my x's together. Okay, think back to middle school. When you average numbers, you add them up and you divide by how many there are. So if I have 2 x values, I'm going to divide by 2, and that's going to give me the average of my x values, the x value in the middle of the other 2 x values. I'm going to do the same thing for my y's. I'm going to add them together, divide by 2, and that will give me the average y value. That will give me the y value that's in the center or the middle. Put some parentheses around it, and there's my coordinate. So you are literally going to add these x's together, divide by 2, add these y's together, divide by 2. We're going to get a lot of fractions. It's okay. You'll have a lot of 0.5s. If you want to live in decimal world, that's fine with me as well. But just know that they're not all going to be nice and pretty, but you guys know that. All right, let's do some examples. And we're finding the midpoint. Okay, example 1. Find the midpoint of 5, 4, and negative 3, 2. All right, very simple. My midpoint is the average of the 2 points. So I'm going to add my x's together. 5 plus negative 3, divide that by 2. And I'm going to add my y's together. 4 plus 2, and divide that by 2. Okay, I'm going to do this mentally because I know that's what y'all want to do. 5 plus negative 3 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And that's it. Without graphing it, I think that y'all could find the midpoint faster algebraically than you would if you plotted both of these points, connected them, and kind of guessed. Okay, you're also going to be more accurate. Let's do another one. Let's find the midpoint of negative 2, 3. And 5, negative 2. Okay, I'm going to find the average. So I'm going to add negative 2 plus 5. I'm going to add my x's together and divide by 2. And then I'm going to add my y's together and divide by 2. 3 plus negative 2 divided by 2. All right. Negative 2 plus 5 is 3. 3 divided by 2 is 3 divided by 2. Okay, can't simplify that guy. 3 plus negative 2 is 1, and 1 divided by 2 is 1 divided by 2. Can't simplify that either. For those of you who live in decimal world, that's the same thing as 1.5, 0.5, right? Either one of those will work for me, that's fine. All right, I don't think I need to do any more of these. You have plenty for your homework. The only thing I want to talk about is working backwards. What if I give you like a point in the midpoint? Can you find the other point that it's in between? Okay. Y'all know I'm going to show every step. So you do you. You figure out what works best for you. But what I want to find, this is example 3. See how it's worded. Find the coordinates of the other endpoint given negative 1, 7 is an endpoint, and 2, 4 is the midpoint. I don't know if that's how it's worded on your homework, but something like that. I'm giving you an endpoint and the midpoint. I want you to work backwards and find the other endpoint. Okay, so midpoint formula said that I got 2, 4 as my midpoint, but it came from averaging my x's. It came from negative 1 plus x divided by 2, right? Negative 1 plus some other number divided by 2 gave me 2. 4 came from 7 plus y, some other y value, divided by 2. Now, this is where some of y'all are going to be able to do this mentally. Some of you are going to want to show the work. Some of you can figure out what x has to be so that when I subtract 1 and divide by 2, I get 2. Some of you can figure out in your head what y needs to be so that when you add 7 and divide by 2, you get 4. For those of you who can't, remember, negative 1 plus x divided by 2 has to equal 2. And 7 plus y divided by 2 has to equal 4. These are two-step equations. Okay, let's do this really quickly. This is showing the work. Okay, this is y. If I multiply by 2 on both sides, I'm blowing out my fraction. So negative 1 plus x equals 4. And then you just have to add 1. X is 5. Let's check. What's negative 1 plus 5? 4. 4 divided by 2? 2. It works. All right, over here I'm going to do the same thing. Multiply by 2 to blow out that fraction. 7 plus y equals 8. Subtract 7. Y is 1. Let's check. What's 7 plus 1? 8. Divided by 2, 4. Okay, that means my other end point had to have been 5, 1. Okay, you have a few homework problems working backwards. Help each other out if y'all have questions at this time. Go ahead and close out of the video, open up the homework, take out a sheet of paper, or continue it here and go ahead and get started on these homework questions. You will have a quiz Monday on distance formula and midpoint formula. Okay, we do not need to keep practicing this. It is what it is. So finish your homework. Come see me Monday morning if you have questions. Have a good weekend.